Well, joining me in the studio, I have Monday Obani, former Vice President, Nigerian Bar Association in our Abuja studio, Wilson Wajaran, spokesperson, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and on Skype I have Ibrahim Magu, TVC News correspondent from Kwara State. Now, first off, let's begin with you now, Ibrahim. The names of 77 Nigerian suspects released by the United States, the Federal Bureau of Investigations for Cybercrime, no doubt drew a very varied reactions, even on social media. But what has been the general pulse or general response of the public now on the request by the EFCC calling on Nigerians to, well, report incidences of cybercrime?
Well, I think this is timely and this is what is expected of Nigerians. Of course, if you suspect anybody of doing that, it's good to expose them because the image of the country is at stake. I recall after the arrest of these 77 alleged fraudsters, Nigeria has been in the eye of the storm, and even, securing visa to the U.S. now, goes with stringent measures. So the image of the country is actually at stake, and right now, Nigerians need to come together for us to prove to the world that the country as a nation does not support this, and whatever efforts Nigerians need to make to support the EFCC and other anti-corruption agencies to ensure that the image of the country, of course, is going to it. Whatever is expected of us as good Nigerians, we need to do it so that the name of the country would, of course, be written in gold and not what we're hearing about.
All right, from the reports we saw there from what you filed, the cars belong to, exotic cars belong to some of these suspects. But generally, what was the reason for them to go into this fraudulent act? Okay, it seems we're here to have a connection with Ibrahim Magu. Let me quickly ask you this now.
They want to make quick money. Okay. Of course, many.
Go ahead, Ibrahim, if you're there. Go ahead. All right, it seems to have some connection issues there with Ibrahim Magu. Let me quickly come to you now, Wilson. The Nigerian Communications Commission says that Nigeria ranks third in global internet crimes behind the UK and the US. What is the reason behind this worrying trend, which is portraying a negative image of the country? Hello, Wilson, can you hear me? I asked you earlier, what is the reason behind this worrying trend, which seems to give a negative image of the country?
I didn't get your question correctly, but if you are talking about the implication of cybercrime on the nation's image, I think it's quite enormous because the activities of the cyber criminals tend to give the impression that most Nigerians have criminal tendency, which is not the correct situation. There are millions of Nigerians who are engaged in legitimate businesses, and they are making progress in various professions. But we have this minor segment of the population who are involved in this act of criminalities that tended to portray us as criminals. And it also has a way of affecting our quest for foreign direct investments. Foreigners are a bit reluctant coming to the country because of the activities of some of these fraudsters, and we need to also check them so that we can have positive image across the globe.
All right, one more question, Wilson. The action of the Federal Bureau of Investigation may seem to more or less smack the efforts of the Financial Crimes Commission in checking against the cybercrime. Is that the case? Do you think the agency is overwhelmed by the rising cases of cybercrime in Nigeria?
Not at all. In fact, I think I need to address the issue of EFCC involvement in cybercrime. It's not as if the commission is just waking up from slumber because FBI arrested some 80 Nigerians in the US. No. If you look at the conviction profile of the commission, as we speak, the EFCC has recorded over 1,500 convictions since inception. And I can tell you that more than 60% of those convictions are cybercrime related, internet fraud related, which goes to show that we have been involved in tackling cybercrime since inception. In fact, agencies across the world look up to EFCC for best practices in terms of investigation of cybercrime around the world. We have the capacity, we have the skill set to do that. We are not overwhelmed at all. What you have discovered in recent times is because we have a partnership. We have a relationship with the FBI, which has enabled us to help them, provide assistance for them, especially in Nigeria, because if they are suspects, Nigerian suspects, locally, FBI cannot come into our territory to do arrests or do investigations. So this partnership exists, in which case we share intelligence and we also do joint operations where the need arises. So to say that we are overwhelmed, I don't think that is correct. We are perfectly on top of the situation.
All right, Monday Obani, from what he said, definitely the EFCC is partnering with the FBI to contain or curtail the rising cases of cybercrime in Nigeria. But what does the law say in terms of cybercrime? How can we nip this in the bud?
Well, thank you for having me. The issue of cybercrime is not new. It's been there. Before now, we have had this issue of Section 419. Remember the advanced fee fraud that was so popular. The only thing is that technology has come in and is aiding this commission of crime in a very large scale. There are a lot of fraud schemes available now on the internet. And Nigeria is not lagging behind in enactment of laws, that deals with all these cyber crimes. And the EFCC has been doing its best in order to actually get hold of most of these criminals and prosecute them. I'm a witness because while I was in EFCC, I saw a lot of boys, small boys, that were arrested on the ground that they committed all these cybercrime, internet fraudsters, and it wasn't something that we should be proud of. And one can say this with every amount of responsibility that I'm happy the way EFCC is collaborating with the FBI in order to get these boys arrested and prosecuted timely, because it's very critical. The international community will want to watch whether the state is showing some level of connivance with the people who are suspects. And if you do that, then you now fall into pariah nation. You become a pariah nation. Nobody will want to do business with you. There was a time a country like Italy fell into that category where they were not ready to punish the criminals, that were committing a lot of crime in Italy. And it's like the state was one word or other supporting the criminal activities of their citizens and all that. So it made a lot of business investors not to do business with Italy and all that. So it's good that EFCC is living up to the expectation by rising to the occasion, by collaborating and timelessly effecting arrests and promising to do more in order to actually give the world the impression that we are not in connivance, that this is not Nigeria that we know, that Nigerians are honest, majority of Nigerians are very hardworking, that this group of people that are in minority, if they are found, they must be prosecuted and they must face the law. So that particular signal is very, very critical for the world to actually believe that we're doing it.
Before we end this discussion, what are the telltale signs one can really identify anyone who is a suspected fraudster?
They always live larger than life. They live big. When they come to club, they spend money. They can spend up to 2 million in a night, drinking, all manner of alcohol, and the kind of cars they ride. And you don't see any visible means of life, what they're doing for a living. You don't see any industry, they are in charge of. They're not managing director of any industry and all that, but they live larger than even the Dangotes of this world. And when they spend money, they spend as if money is going out of existence. They squander it. They go to parties the way they spread money and all that. So if you watch most of these guys that were trailed by FBI, you saw some of the videos, the way they were throwing dollar, not naira, I'm talking about dollars. And they live big, they live large, and they attract unnecessary attention to themselves and all that, because money, you can't hide money, So it's when you all see such people and how they live and the neighborhood where they live and the kind of cars they ride, it gives you that sign that these guys may likely, because you don't know when they go, which company they're in charge of, which business they manage, and what products they bring into the market, but they are living bigger than, as I said earlier, Dangotes of this world. So it shows you that these guys have no business they're doing apart from internet fraud.
All right, Wilson, before we let you go now, what other options do you think can be adopted in addressing these concerns?